Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the opening plenary of the CHCI Public Policy Conference.
Offers 2 fellowship programs designed to strengthen professional and leadership skills.
Our Public Policy Fellowship is a paid 9-month fellowship for those that have recently graduated and offers hands-on experience in areas such as international affairs, economic development, and other policy areas of your choice.
The CHCI Graduate Fellowship Program is for exceptional Latinos who have earned at least a master's degree. It's also a 9-month paid placement and offers unparalleled exposure and hands-on experience in education, health, housing, law, and the STEM fields.
Challenging team-building exercises and weekly leadership training sessions enhance both programs. Fellows are also providing an opportunity to give back to the community by participating in a group volunteer project.
Why do you feel it's important for corporate sponsors such as PepsiCo?
I don't think it's enough to look at social inequities or political inequities in these very siloed workspaces. So I think those public-private partnerships are vital to us moving forward.
It really is an incubator for leadership, empowering them to go back into their communities and share what you've gained here and contribute.
For more information, visit chci.org.
Now to begin our program, please welcome the Executive Director of the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for Hispanics and alumnus of CHCI's 1996-97 fellowship class, Alejandra Ceja.
Buenos dias. This morning, I have the honor of opening the first session of CHCI's 2013 Public Policy Conference. This conference is such a great opportunity for all of us to get together and discuss the policy areas affecting the Latino community. It is just one of the many programs that CHCI offers to engage our community and to help build a stronger America. As many of you know, CHCI has been working for over 36 years to help develop the next generation of Latino leaders. I myself am a graduate of CHCI's Public Policy Fellowship Program. Today, I have the opportunity to represent the educational needs for the youngest, the largest, and fastest growing minority group in the country. I thank CHCI and all the leaders that have led the way for me and my fellow CHCI alumni. CHCI can't do all that it does without the help of certain sponsors. I want to call your attention to the important investment made by our sponsors. They make our programs and events possible. Our 2013 Public Policy Conference host sponsor is PepsiCo. Our signature premier sponsor is Comcast NBC Universal Telemundo. Our signature innovator sponsors, Anheuser-Busch Companies, Bank of America, Dell, and Southwest Airlines. And our signature champion sponsors, American Petroleum Institute, Eli Lilly and Company, Facebook, McDonald's Corporation, State Farm Insurance Companies, and Verizon Communications. Let's give them a round of applause for their support. This morning's session is sponsored by the Society of Human Resource Management, who we will hear from shortly. Also, it is sponsored by the National Education Association, Union Pacific, the Lumina Foundation, and USA Funds. Thank you all for your support of CHCI. This year, CHCI continues to go social, and you can add to and follow the discussion on Twitter and Facebook. If your friends, colleagues, or anyone in your network can attend our session in person, they are in luck. Please spread the word. We are streaming live at hhm.chci.org/livestream. All of our discussions over the next 2 days are framed by questions that have come through our HHM microsite, and it isn't too late to join the discussion, as we will be taking questions from the microsite at hhm.chci.org/agenda, as well as from our live audience later in the program. And now it is my pleasure to introduce CHCI's chair. He is regarded as a champion for the disadvantaged and has distinguished himself as a strong advocate for education, housing, and economic development. His primary goal in Congress has been to reduce the chronic unemployment rate in regions of his district. By focusing on developing a highly educated, well-trained workforce, modernizing the local infrastructure, including roads and highways, and creating new job opportunities, he has been instrumental in bringing unemployment rates in his district to record lows. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, Representative Ruben Hinojosa.
Thank you, Alejandra. Thank you for that very generous introduction. I think I have lost my place here. Thank you. Welcome. Welcome to the 2013 Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute Public Policy Conference. This week, we gather to honor our past, to celebrate the CHCI of today, and to recommit ourselves to investing in our nation's future, our Latino youth. For 36 years, CHCI has educated, empowered, and connected Latino leaders who are changing the economic and public policy landscape in our United States. And that tradition will continue into the future. I am proud of the opportunities we are providing our young rising stars. In the last 5 years, CHCI has increased the number of interns and fellows by nearly 230%, from 55 to 125 slots per year. I'd like to recognize this year's class of interns and fellows. Will the CHCI current interns, public policy fellows, and graduate fellows please rise and be recognized? Thank you. I offer my congratulations to each and every one of you. We couldn't do this without the support of our fantastic board of directors. I want to recognize the executive committee, Vice Chair Ivan Zapian, Treasurer Henry Fernandez, Secretary Silvia Aldana, General Counsel Derek Leon, and CHCI President and CEO, our own Esther Aguilera. Please give them a big round of applause. The theme of this year's Hispanic Heritage Month events is Our Time, A Strong America. The general election in November 2012 sent a very strong message. Latinos will shape the landscape and the future of this great nation. In kicking off our conference, I have a call to action. I am calling it Building Our Future Together. Building Our Future Together is about showcasing Latino leaders who are making a difference, celebrating our successes, and investing in the capacity of our youth. Building Our Future Together is also about focusing our attention on the needs of our community. We need to increase representation of Latinos in the federal government, employment, in corporate America, as well as in charitable and union sectors. We need greater access to higher education to ensure our Latino students graduate from college. That is very important. We need a renewed investment in our job training programs. We need millions of Americans who are uninsured to get enrolled in the new health marketplace. We need meaningful access to the right to vote. And yes, we need comprehensive immigration reform. The Congressional Hispanic Caucus has been working with our colleagues in Congress to ensure the needs of our Latino community are a priority. Our struggles are no longer about a community. This is about building America's future together. With Latinos representing 1 in 3 Americans under 18 years of age, the strength of the United States is tied to the success of this growing demographic. We must ensure that America's agenda reflects issues important to all and that will impact the well-being of future generations. We are proud Americans, and we are proud of the historic contributions of our Latino community. In closing, I want to thank PepsiCo for being the lead sponsor of this conference. Give them a big round of applause. I also want to thank all of the CHCI supporters who make the great work of the CHCI possible. Stay tuned for Wednesday night's iconic CHCI Awards Gala. We are honored to host President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama and recognize our accomplished awardees, Salma Hayek, Dr. Francisco Figueroa, and Dr. Juan Andrade. Give them a big round of applause. I also want to thank my good friend, Senator Bob Menendez, and Secretary Duncan, and all of this morning's panelists for sharing their knowledge and expertise on this important panel that is about to take place. Education, economy, and workforce. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for enjoying this conference.
Thank you, Congressman Hinojosa. As we mentioned before, our sponsors are a vital part of this organization. Please welcome Jorge Consuegra, a partner with the Fearless Group and board member for this morning's sponsor, the Society for Human Resource Management.
Thank you, Alejandra, for that kind introduction. It's a privilege for SHRM to be partnering again with the Institute in sponsoring these important discussions. We're proud to have been a sponsor since 2009, and we look forward to continue to partner with CHCI on this respected program. We're here with you because we share common goals and common concerns. You focus on economic and educational opportunities, on financial security, and on the important role that Hispanics have in our nation's future. So do we. So do the 265,000 members of SHRM, HR professionals across the nation who are driving those issues on the workplace front line every day. The focus of our nation should be on the economy and on workforce issues, putting people back to work. Reversing the skills gap in our workforce, creating flexible workplaces that make American companies employers of choice. All of that speaks to the heart of what HR professionals face every day. And for Hispanics, those issues are especially important. Let's look at the numbers. On one hand, Hispanics are a population force. More than half the U.S. population growth in the last 10 years was attributable to Hispanics. But unemployment numbers among Hispanic adults is high. It's approximately 9.4%. We can get more people into jobs if we focus on education and improving the skills of these workers. As you know, education is the great equalizer. Here's the challenge and our opportunity. We have a skills gap in the United States. HR professionals can't find enough job candidates with the skills employers need. There are close to 4 million jobs in the U.S. right now that our members can't fill because they don't have enough qualified applicants. Those jobs range from the highly skilled STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math, to the mid-level skilled jobs like welders, electricians, plumbers, and carpenters. Hispanics must be ready to fill any of these jobs. Together, SHRM, the HR profession, and all of you, we can help to prepare Latinos and assist them in creating a more prosperous future. If we provide that preparation, that training, and professional development, everyone wins. Hispanic workers win. They gain the education that puts them on a level playing field with the broader population. And our nation wins. Our economy gains the skill it needs to keep pace with the world. Like you, we at SHRM have a vision where all people are treated with dignity and respect in the workplace, a place where we celebrate our differences, the wonderful mix of our ethnic, cultural, religious, and societal influences. We have much in common, and the common good is what we all seek. We're proud to join you in that journey. Thank you.
Thank you again for your support, Jorge. And now I would like to introduce the moderator for today's panel discussion and session, Fernando Pizarro. Fernando is the Washington affiliate correspondent for Univision. He covers Congress, the White House, and the federal government. He is here today to help guide our conversation about the economic recovery and the role Latino leadership and the Latino workforce will play in this century. Please welcome Fernando Pizarro. You're welcome.
Good morning, everybody. I'm supposed to be your guider. I'm guiding you through this conversation. Well, thank you very much for having me here, inviting me to be here. Thank you, Alejandra. And once again, please remember, you can join this discussion and send us your questions. So you're ready to write this down. This is the web address. Is hhm.chci.org/agenda. You all have it? Today we'll be talking about education, the economy, and the workforce. And education is the key that will spur economic growth along with innovation. The Latino community is the fastest growing community within the United States with a huge impact on the workforce and the economy. By 2025, listen to this, 1 of every 2 entrants into the U.S. workforce will be Latino. Our community's spending power is $1.2 trillion and growing. Therefore, it is imperative not only to educate and prepare our Latino youth, but to cultivate leaders within our community that will help to build a stronger America. As you know, I work for Univision, and in February 2010, Univision Communications launched Es el Momento campaign in a partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Department of Education, and many other organizations that I'm sure are here today to give information to students once they leave high school to be able to get access to college. And maybe not necessarily related to that, but some of the good news are that recently the Pew Research Hispanic Center, I think in May, I have the information right here, because we always talk about high school dropout rates among Latinos, and we're always concerned about that. But listen to this, which was released just in May. A record 7 in 10, which is 69% Hispanic high school graduates in the class of 2012, enrolled in college last fall. That is 2 percentage points higher, which is 67%, than the white counterparts. So for the first time, maybe, more Latinos enrolled in college than ever before. That is a very, I think, impressive data. So exactly how will Latinos make an impact on the 21st century? How can we as a community encourage the pursuit of graduate degrees in civic service? How do we create this pipeline to the boardrooms and federal government? Today we're going to discuss these questions and more with a diverse and distinguished group of panelists. But first, we have some very special guests for you to help us frame this discussion. Our first guest speaker is somebody that I've known for quite a while now, followed him, covered him when he was in the House of Representatives, today in the Senate, Senator Robert Menendez. He's the son of immigrants who grew up in a tenement building in Union City, New Jersey. As a college student at the age of 19, he led a petition to reform the local school board. That was the start of his public service career back in 1973. Senator Menendez has the distinction of being the first Hispanic to achieve many leadership positions, including the highest-ranking Hispanic in the House of Representatives, the first Hispanic to serve in the Senate leadership, and the first minority in New Jersey to win federal office statewide. Please join me in welcoming the 1999 CHCI Medallion of Excellence Award recipient, Senator Robert Menendez.
Buenos días, bienvenidos a Washington. ¿Están despiertos? Ah, bueno, okay. Welcome to Washington. It's great to be here at the kickoff of another celebration of our community throughout the course of this week. And I can't think of a better way of starting that celebration than talking about the importance and the power of education in the lives of our young people of our community and what it means to the country. Let me thank Fernando for his gracious introduction and for the work he does every day in delivering information and the news to our community, and to the CHCI and to the experts and partners who will be looking at keeping our economic recovery going and what role Latino leadership and the growing Latino workforce will play in that recovery. How can we innovate and make sure that HSIs can help further the pursuit of graduate degrees and help pipeline Latinos into corporate positions, corporate boards, and into public service? I want to thank our chair, Ruben Hinojosa, who's done a fantastic job in leading both the CHC caucus as well as the Institute. And let me begin by saying that which we all know, which is that there is nothing more important than a good education. Nothing more important than bringing along the next generation of Latino leaders, helping them to do everything that they can to compete for good-paying 21st century jobs, helping to unleash the knowledge, creativity, and drive that they will need to compete and that the nation will need to continue to be at the forefront of global economic leadership. And I can tell you, as one who knows, as a graduate of a Hispanic serving institution myself, that HSIs are making a profound difference in that effort. I want to especially recognize St. Peter's College and New Jersey City University, two of the 8 HSIs in our state, for leadership on public higher education and for nurturing the diversity that makes New Jersey such a great place to live and raise a family. Now more than ever, the role HSIs play in educating and empowering young Latino students is critical to America's future for one simple reason. Things are clearly changing. The Census Bureau tells us that by 2018, 5 short years from now, children in America will be majority minority, meaning students will come largely from diverse and multiracial backgrounds. By 2043, only 30 years from now, the entire nation will be majority minority, a significant transformation that will require Latinos and other groups to have role models for leadership, mentors to look up to, and teachers who can unlock the potential. In fact, what they do every day is part of a broader economic and social imperative that will have serious consequences for the future success of the nation. So think about it. This is a different world than the world in which I grew up in. I know it very well as the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. It's a different world in so many different ways. One of the ways in which it's dramatically different that in a world in which the boundaries of mankind have largely been erased in the pursuit of human capital for the delivery of a service or a product, that you find a world in which those boundaries have been erased so that an engineer's report is done in India and sent back to the United States for a fraction of the cost. A radiologist in Northern Ireland sends back a report read by your doctor at your local hospital, or if you have a problem with your credit card, as I recently did, because there was a charge on my bill. It was from some bar that I've never been at. By the size of the charge, I wish I had been there because it must have been one heck of a time, but in any event, it wasn't mine. And when I called, I ended up with a call center in South Africa. In pursuit of human capital for the delivery of a service or of a product, we are globally challenged, which means that for the nation to continue to be a global economic leader, it needs to be at the apex of the curve of intellect, the most highly educated generation of Americans we ever had. So I know that encouraging young Latinos to learn more, to try harder, and to reach further will empower our young people to be part of a broader solution. It will empower them to appreciate that education is the key that unlocks social mobility and economic opportunity in this country. It will encourage them to be proud of their heritage, to celebrate the past as they engage in the debate of the future. On Election Day of 2012, we received a powerfully clear message on how exactly the American political and demographic landscape has changed and what the future looks like. A record 11.2 million Latinos, more than ever before, voted in the 2012 election and helped re-elect the president by overwhelmingly voting in his favor. By turning out in unprecedented numbers and tipping battleground states blue, Latinos showed the nation once again that we are a powerful force in American politics and must be taken into consideration not only in national elections, but in my view, even more importantly, in national policies. Hispanic Americans are an integral part of the American democratic process far beyond Election Day, and it has become increasingly clear that the needs and contributions of our communities, particularly the right to a quality education, regardless of the happenstance of where you were born or what station in life you were born to, should not matter. That quality education should be able to be there for every child, and certainly for every Latino child, whether they live in the most affluent community in America or in el barrio. And that must be our challenge and our continuous effort to achieve. As the only Latino Democratic senator in Congress, I vow to continuously work tirelessly to ensure that Latinos are heard in Washington and that the issues of greatest importance to our community are prioritized and addressed in Congress. Today, Congress seems unable to act responsibly in the face of serious issues that threatens the well-being of our students and communities across the country. Today, that inability to act responsibly in educating our future workforce comes, yes, in the present debate and challenge we're having of just simply passing a budget, but in something which I voted against, but it faces us every day, which is called sequestration. Unfortunately, this bad idea is now a reality, and it's impacting or will impact millions of Americans. While we need to be smart about our budget challenges, sequestration was not the right way to cut deficits and cut spending. It is threatening critical college affordability programs like the Supplemental Opportunity Grant Program and Work Study. It's simply bad policy to cut study assistance, work study for low-income students and state grants that help students afford the cost of college. And I know, because without Pell, Perkins, and work study, I would have never gone to St. Peter's College, I would have never gone to Rutgers Law School, and I certainly wouldn't be the senior senator from New Jersey today. We need to make sure that is a birthright for each and every student willing to work hard and have the opportunity to achieve their God-given potential. And that is part of our challenge here today. Shortchanging students is unacceptable because when we shortchange students, we shortchange the nation. And that's why I've always supported funding for HSIs, for Hispanic students to have the tools to be successful in the workforce, especially now when the number of Latinos from 18 to 24-year-old are enrolled in college is at an all-time high, and Hispanic students represent the largest racial or ethnic minority group on college campuses in the United States. New census data tells us that Hispanic students are doing better in school, getting higher grades, and 49% of them are now going to college. But the fact is that there's still a challenge among dropout rates among Latinos. Even though the rates have fallen to 15% in 2012, we can do better. And our collective effort to mentor young people, to make sure they're going to schools that can fulfill their potential, to lower that dropout rate even further, to make sure that everyone has an education they need to be part of the high-skilled workforce community, especially when we represent 16% of the entire nation's workforce, when the growing number of Latino students represent a significant part of the nation's competitive future. This is not just our community's imperative, it is a national imperative. And finally, it is also important that we use the best and the brightest that we already have, and that's why as a member of the Gang of Eight, I'm glad that we have the most progressive DREAM Act provisions in the legislation for immigration reform that passed the Senate, and what we need is a vote in the House of Representatives. And while you are here this week, talk to your congressperson and say, we want a vote in the House of Representatives on comprehensive immigration reform. So I applaud all of you for coming together, and I applaud the following gentleman who is my pleasure to introduce. He is the Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan. He has been a powerful voice for the Latino community on reducing dropout rates and strengthening the teacher corps. He has recognized in the past that the need for Hispanic teachers, especially men, is desperate, that more than 22% of the nation's K-12 enrollment is Hispanic, but less than 2% of the nation's teaching pool is made up of Hispanic males, and that, as he said, teachers and administrators who come from the same communities are a key to keeping students engaged in their schooling. He's called on Latino parents to enroll their children in preschool and other quality early childhood programs to give them the head start they need. The Secretary has also said, and he said he'd like, and I quote, to see more school districts adopt robust foreign language programs, saying it is the norm in other countries that are among America's biggest global competitors. He has stressed the need for more science fairs, robotics programs, mentoring, internship opportunities in the STEM field for Latino students, and he is just someone who I clearly have a sense that understands our community, has been an advocate for it, and who wants to see each one of our children fulfill their God-given potential. Please join me in welcoming the Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here to help kick off this important conference and critical conversation. You'll be hearing in a moment from expert panelists, including our very own member of the President's Advisory Commission on Educational Excellence for Hispanics, Lily Eskelsen Garcia. She'll speak about the vital role education plays in equipping the Latino community for success. But first, I want to thank Senator Menendez for all of his tremendous work and that kind introduction. Please give him a huge round of applause. And also Representative Hinojosa, who's just a fantastic partner for his continued commitment to CHCI. Please give him a round of applause as well. They are both passionately dedicated to advancing the educational and leadership opportunities for young Latinos. I couldn't be more thrilled about having them as partners. Organizations like CHCI create important opportunities for rising leaders, including your alumni, people like Gabriela Gomez and Alex Ceja. Both are doing tremendous work for us at the Department of Education and also helping to pave the way for the next generation of leaders. In my 4+ years on the job, I've visited literally hundreds and hundreds of schools and met with thousands of teachers, parents, and students. And everywhere I go, people attest to the urgency of providing a world-class education for all children, no matter their race, income, or zip code. Why is education more important than ever before to ensure equal opportunity and economic prosperity? Simply put, because the world has changed. It is no longer enough just to have a strong back and a strong work ethic. In today's knowledge-based, globally competitive economy, a world-class education and some form of post-secondary education is absolutely essential. As President Obama has said, education is no longer just a pathway to opportunity and success. It is a prerequisite for success. America's economic growth is inextricably linked to the success of the Hispanic community. As we all know, Hispanics are the largest and fastest growing minority group and will represent fully 60% of our nation's population growth between 2005 and 2050. The good news is that during our administration's first term, high school graduation rates and college enrollment rates increased rapidly among Hispanics. And these trends are very, very encouraging. From June 2008 to June 2011, the on-time graduation rate of Hispanic high school students jumped more than 10 percentage points. And as a result, an additional 164,000 Latino students graduated on time. That's 164,000 young people with a better chance at getting a good job, owning their own home, and supporting a family. Earlier this month, the Census Bureau reported that it estimates the number of Hispanic students enrolled in college jumped by more than 50% from 2008 to 2012, with an additional 1.1 million Hispanic students enrolled in higher ed today. That's 1 million more young people getting a real shot at the American dream and the opportunity to thrive in a globally competitive world. That's the good news. The bad news and the reality check is that we're not making progress nearly fast enough. Just 22% of young Hispanic adults ages 25 to 34 have a college degree today. Clearly, this isn't a time to relax or to become complacent. We need to ensure that more of our Latino students are not just enrolling in higher education, but are staying and getting their degrees and credentials. We need to ensure they are not just attending high school, but are taking AP classes and rigorous STEM courses. Finally, we need to ensure that they are given the same opportunities as everyone else and taking on those very real challenges. Today, a college education is more essential than ever before, but unfortunately, it's also more expensive. And our administration has worked hard to take historic steps to help students pay for college. The number of Pell Grant recipients has increased more than 50%, from about 6.2 million in 2008 to more than 9 million just 3 years later. We've made it easier for students to make loan payments through income-based repayment options like IBR and pay-as-you-earn. And we've made it much easier to fill out the FAFSA, the financial aid form, and now provide it in Spanish as well. But quite honestly, it has not been enough. Far too many states cut their spending on higher education during the recession. And we know that these state budget cuts have been the largest driver of tuition increases at public colleges over the past decade. And in a double whammy, Congress imposed the sequester. Sequester is simply a disaster for education at every level. Fewer Head Start slots, less money for K-12, less money for higher ed. We are simply hurting our families and ultimately hurting our country. President Obama has proposed to reward colleges and universities that work hard to keep higher education affordable and shift federal aid away from colleges that don't keep costs down or provide a good value for hardworking students and families. As I have said repeatedly, a high school diploma is just not enough anymore. Some form of higher education is what everyone needs, whether it's a 4-year degree or technical training, and it's our responsibility to ensure that everyone who works hard has that kind of opportunity. Sadly today, literally hundreds of thousands of high-wage, high-skilled jobs across this country are going unfilled, even in tough economic times, because employers simply can't find workers with the necessary skills in education. Hispanics can and should be filling these jobs, the same as any other American. I recognize that college affordability is not the only issue for Hispanic students. Our immigration system is fundamentally broken, and it's time we look seriously at how to improve it, not only for educating our nation's youth, but to strengthen our nation's economy as well. Let me begin by saying that I believe passionately in the DREAM Act. So does the President, and we know it is the right thing to do at so many different levels. As all of you know, last year, the President announced that certain young people who were brought to the U.S. as young children and who do not present a risk to national security or public safety will be considered for deferred action. Those who demonstrate that they meet the guidelines will be eligible to receive deferred action for a period of 2 years, subject to renewal, and would be eligible to apply for work authorization. This is specifically for young people who were brought to the United States by their parents and have grown up here in America. They are Americans in their hearts and in their minds, just not quite yet on paper. However, this is only a temporary stopgap, as many millions of undocumented immigrants are still left in an unstable place within our economy. Congress has to get past its dysfunction and act on comprehensive immigration reform and fix our broken system. Led by the President, we are all going to continue to fight for that because it is the right thing to do for our economy, for our security, and for our nation's hardworking families. I'm also convinced that our efforts to improve K-12 education for all students will be of great benefit to Hispanic students, who are now the largest minority group in our nation's public schools. But in addition, we must target more support to Hispanic Serving Institutions, HSIs, at the post-secondary level. And that is why the President has committed to providing $2.5 billion over the next 10 years to HSIs and other minority-serving institutions. These schools are using this funding to renew, reform, and expand their programs to ensure that Hispanics are provided every chance to rise to their full potential, earn their degrees, and enter the workforce. This past May, I had the honor of speaking at Ostos Community College's commencement in New York, where over 60% of students are Hispanic. Over the past 3 years, the remarkable president there, Dr. Felix Matos Rodriguez, has more than doubled enrollment and significantly improved both retention and graduation rates. At the University of Texas Pan American, another HSI, President Robert Nelson is continuing to work to improve Hispanic education. Over the last 10 years, the percent of students who are taking remedial classes has fallen from 47% down to 16%. More high school students are being encouraged to enroll in dual enrollment courses, and professors there are actively going into the community to improve parental engagement and involvement in their young children's education. And these are just two examples of the more than 350 HSIs across the country, all who are working hard to improve the lives of 1.5 million Hispanic students through improved educational opportunity. HSIs are a vitally important part of the solution to advancing Hispanic attainment, and we must continue working together to support our most vulnerable students. Everyone has to contribute, from parents to teachers, from unions to corporations, from elected officials to philanthropic organizations. We all have a stake in continuing to accelerate the pace of progress. With a strong work ethic and an equally strong commitment to family and religious values, the Hispanic community has demonstrated time and time again an unwavering commitment to equal opportunity and equity. That commitment, coupled with real access to educational opportunities, can ensure that the Hispanic community is equipped to help lead the country where we need to go. We must increase the number of Latino engineers, astronauts, principals, teachers, CEOs, and leaders in state and local and federal government. In my lifetime, I would love to see the first Latino president. But to realize that classic American dream, we need to ensure that more children have access to high-quality early learning opportunities, great K-12 schools, and affordable colleges and universities. We know no one individual, no single agency working in isolation can begin to accomplish this task. It will take all of us working together to set high expectations, to raise the bar and cross that finish line. Thank you so much for all of your remarkable dedication and commitment to making that American dream a reality for younger generations. Thank you so much for having me this morning, and I hope you have a great conference. Thank you.
He makes me look really short. He's really tall. Last time I interviewed him, I had to look up like that. Anyway, next we welcome an amazing panel to look into the future and address the role Latinos will play in our economy. Our first panelist is Lily Eskelsen Garcia, one of the national experts, Vice President of the National Education Association. There she is. She's one of the highest-ranking labor leaders in the country and one of the most influential Hispanic educators. She began her career in education as a lunch worker in a school cafeteria. She became a kindergarten aide and was encouraged by the teacher to go to college and become a teacher herself. She worked her way through the University of Utah on scholarships, student loans, and as a folk singer. I didn't know that. Next time I interview you, you're going to have to sing. Graduating magna cum laude in elementary education and later earning her master's degree in instructional technology. Her blog, Lily's Blackboard, covers the latest education issues. Her advice has been published in Parenting Magazine, and she has been featured on MSNBC, CNN en Español, and Univision, of course. Well, welcome. Our next guest is William Hansen, President and CEO of USA Funds. He has more than 30 years of experience in education at the kindergarten and 12th grade and post-secondary levels. Prior to becoming USA Funds President and Chief Executive Officer, he worked for 15 years in the public sector and 20 years in the corporate and nonprofit sectors. He oversees an organization that since 1960 has served approximately 22.4 million students and parents, as well as thousands of educational and financial institutions. He served as Deputy U.S. Secretary of Education from 2001 to 2003, and he played a key role in developing and implementing landmark legislation that enhanced accountability in education and helped the Education Department earn its first ever independent clean financial audit. Thank you. When you talk about Hispanic media, the name Mónica Lozano always comes up. When you talk about La Opinión, Diario La Prensa in New York, she's the Chief Executive Officer and Chair of the Board of Impremedia. And she has served as the company CEO since May 24th, 2010. And prior to that, she was the Senior Vice President overseeing its publishing group. She has over 25 years of experience in Hispanic media. She's leading the transformation of Impremedia to a fully integrated multimedia Hispanic content company. Impremedia publishes the most highly respected and influential Spanish language newspapers and websites. And you can clap again because I'm not done. She's widely regarded as one of the most influential Latinas in the country, serving on the boards of corporate and nonprofit boards, and was a member of President Obama's Council on Jobs and Competitiveness. And our final panelist is Jamie Mirasotis, President and CEO of the Lumina Foundation. He's a longtime champion of the idea that higher education enhances both society and individuals, and he has worked for decades to increase educational opportunity among low-income, minority, and other historically underrepresented populations. At Lumina, he continues that effort by employing a strategic, outcomes-based approach in pursuing the Foundation's mission of expanding college access and success. Under his leadership, Lumina has embraced an ambitious and specific goal to ensure that by 2025, 60% of Americans hold high-quality degrees, certificates, and other credentials, up from the current level of less than 40%. Welcome. Well, thank you for joining us. And as you know, we're here today to discuss the state of the economic recovery and focusing on the role that Latino leadership and the Latino workforce will play in this century. And education will play an important part, as we all know, in creating an effective workforce to spur economic growth. I want to remind everyone here, and you can join this conversation. And at home, too, we will be taking questions from our live audience, also from the CHCI microsite page. So remember the address I gave you earlier? Well, here it goes again, hhm.chci.org/agenda. So let's begin. We have about 3 minutes for each question. So question for Lily. How would you define success for a public school student, and what key elements of that definition do you think are challenges for Latino students in graduating from high school and entering higher education, especially now when we still talk about dropout rates and all that?
Exactly. And it's a fabulous question. We spent an awful lot of time, my colleagues with the National Education Association, educators, saying it's not a test score. It's not a standardized test score that determines success. But we have to go the next level. So what is it? For me, I don't know any business on the planet that is looking for an employee who, when given 4 choices, can kind of sort of guess which one's the right one. We need kids who really understand critical thinking. They're creative, they're problem solvers, they're organizers, they can work with a team. They absolutely need to know the basic skills. But if I teach a child, I've taught 6th grade for 20 years, if I teach that child to read so that someone can hand them propaganda and it never occurs to them to question it, if I read it on the internet so it must be true, ends up being what's in their head, then I have failed to educate them. They will not be successful in their lives. So my colleagues, the educators in America, over 3 million NEA members, are saying, what can we do to make sure our kids get everything they need? And that's making them the whole blessed child, the whole blessed student, mind, body, character. And we're telling people, do what you have to do with tests, but do not let that test become the definition of success. Your kids need so much more than can ever be on a standardized test. Proceed with, until apprehended. Do what you can do without an act of Congress, with nobody's permission. And our educators are ramping up. They're being innovative. They're collaborating with their communities. You're going to find out on the table something that says raise your hand. You want some money? Because raise your hand, we have put a fund together at the NEA of over $6 million that comes from our members, comes from our teachers, so that we can start funding their good ideas. And they're excited. They're out there collaborating with communities, and many of those communities are communities of color, they're communities of poverty, and they're saying, we're going to give these kids something that they need, and something that's usually missing when it comes to a program, and that is the caring, compassionate professional saying, I'm looking at your whole child, the whole family, and that whole school learning community to make sure those kids get everything they need to succeed.
Thank you, Lily. When we look at, do polls and we analyze polls about what interests Hispanics, people always think, or people in Congress or activists that want to put immigration sometimes at the top. But we know repeatedly, perhaps the top is, together with the economy, is education. So for Bill, what can local communities do to advance educational attainment for Latinos? And from your many years of experience, what have you seen that works and simply needs to be more widespread?
Well, I think the most important thing is really leadership and focus. And I've served on several nonprofit boards, Reading is Fundamental, and other foundations that really are community-based. And I think it really has to start in the community and not in Washington. And I think there are really a couple of important areas of focus that we need to look at. Really, one is data for our students. And in Indiana, we've actually funded the Excellence in Education program, which really gives students data to where they can make meaningful choices of what type of college they want to go to, what type of degree program they want to go into. And also, it's very important for us to focus on access. And one of the big things that we've partnered with is a program called College Goals Sunday, which really helps students who might be first-generation students or others who aren't familiar with college learn about the federal aid application process, which can be a very cumbersome, complex program. So data, information are very important things that we can work with at a local level. And also, obviously, money is very important, and one of the things that our foundation and our company does is to really help fund Hispanic scholarship opportunities. And this is very important to really help leverage the other dollars that are there at the state level and the federal level to close those gaps and to help open up opportunities for our students. But I also think, though, that we really, the whole K-12 education effort really needs to let our students and all of our students know that higher education is possible. The money's there, the access is there, the opportunities are there, and for us to be able to let them know that those opportunities are there. And I think in this very changing world in which we're living in right now, where we have 4 million jobs out there that are available, but that our college graduates don't have the skill sets for them, I think we really need to start working with students much earlier in the middle school and high school years to help them figure out which pathway is most important for them so they can pick the best college or the best certificate or whatever program it is that's going to lead to a good job when they get out of college. Because right now, with our soft economy and the tough unemployment numbers, we really need to do a better job aligning our higher education system with the needs of our students. And so I think it really starts in those formative years for students to be able to, know that they can go to college and what they're doing in high school does matter, and that the funding is going to be there for them and the opportunities are going to be there for them if they work hard. It should be about the students and not the system, and I think that's really what we need to focus on.
Thank you. The other top priority for Latinos in general, all the polls say it's the economy, jobs. And based on your experience, Monica, the President's Jobs Council, what do you feel are some of the essential components for job growth for Latinos and the role that they will play in growing America's competitiveness moving forward? Especially when we look at those figures that I just mentioned earlier from Pew Hispanic, which we have, for the first time, a much higher enrollment in college from Latino students.
So the Jobs Council was an interesting experience. It was put together by the President, and the members that served on the Jobs Council represented the private sector, business, but also academia, their economists, et cetera. And we really looked at some of the overarching trends that Senator Menendez and others have already talked about, and actually, Lily, I think you made a perfect point. So that when you think about America coming out of this recession, America will not look the same as it did prior to. And the reason for that are the things that you all know about in this room. Obviously, technology has transformed the way that our society is connected, and the needs of employers have changed as a result of technology. The issues of globalization, Senator Menendez also mentioned that. It's a much more connected world. It's a much more global world. So our ability to create an economy that also can operate effectively at a global scale. And then thirdly, just the question of demographics. And not only are Latinos, sort of the force of the future, given our high birth rates, the number of kids today that are in, K-12 and going into college, but within the next 15 years, 78 million Americans will age out of the workforce. And so it required us to think about sort of this macro environment and then really think about Latinos being the force going forward. So we spent a lot of time, Fernando, looking at the skills gap. We've talked about that here. You've got, over 2 million jobs today that go unfilled because people don't have the skills for the employment of today. And when you think about STEM, a lot of people are talking about STEM. One of the things that we were able to identify is that even if you've got a number of students that are going into engineering, more than 50% of those drop out in the first year. 50% leave the field of engineering. So one of the things the Jobs Council did was look at how is the curriculum being developed so that we can retain. The last thing I wanted to mention is really around sort of this adaptability and skills. We created something called Skills for America's Future. And the idea is to create demand-based curriculum at the community college level so that an employer says, this is what I need. I need my people trained today. And our community colleges are now able to more effectively offer the skills training in a real-time environment so that we can fill that skills gap that we've been talking about. But it takes that kind of collaboration where you've got the private sector saying, this is what I need, our educational system flexible enough to be able to offer that training in a real-time basis, and working collaboratively. I think there's some really interesting models out there.
Thank you. Then we're going to talk about access, Jamie. And one of the things that has been a topic in Congress the last year is the issue of college loans, for instance. That's been a widely debated topic, to say the least. Can you talk to us about the transformative effect higher education can have on a family and community, and what the Lumina Foundation is doing to address the college attainment goals for Latinos?
This really goes back to the powerful observation Monica just made about the skills gap. I equate this to the equivalent of the labor market in the United States essentially being two simultaneous games of musical chairs. And in one game are the people who have a high school credential or less. And in the other game are the people who have some form of post-secondary education, some form of post-high school education. And what's happening very rapidly, particularly since the 2008 recession, is that the chairs are being taken away from the people who are in the game, who have jobs or who are looking for jobs in that game with the high school credentials or less, and they're being moved over to the game for the people with post-secondary skills and credentials. That's really what's at stake here. 2/3 of the jobs being created today require some form of post-high school education. So in the course of our lifetimes, most of the people in this room, what we've seen is a higher education going from being a nice thing, a useful thing, to being a necessary thing. It is absolutely essential to be a part of the middle class, to be successful in our economy. And so our higher education system simply has to adapt and change in order to be able to serve that need. Now, right now in our country, we have wholly inadequate access to higher education for our underserved populations, particularly Latinos. Latino educational attainment rates are simply not sufficient to meet the country's needs. Now, this is not a question of whether or not we're going to do the right thing for Latinos. This is about whether we're going to do the right thing for the country, because the success of Latinos in education is critically connected to the success of our collective well-being as a nation. The success of our economy, of our country, is going to run through every Latino household in this country. That's really the juggernaut of Hispanic demographics that we're talking about. So increasing access to higher education, increasing the success of those who get access to higher education, is critically important. It is one of our most important national issues. How are we going to do that? Well, at Lumina Foundation, we think there's two basic things that need to be done. The first is we've got to mobilize the country around this idea that increasing post-secondary attainment is really important. It's not a nice, it's a necessary. That means mobilizing policymakers, business leaders, education leaders, and students and their families themselves, plus us in philanthropy, in order to be able to focus on increasing educational attainment from the less than 40% that we have today as a country to 60% by the year 2025. Attainment rates for Latinos, as you know, are less than half the national average. That's simply unacceptable. The second thing we need to do is to make the hard choices about system redesign. The truth is, this system was not built to serve the rapidly larger numbers of students who need to be served. And in particular, we've got to make some hard choices and redesign our student finance system, which is simply broken. We cannot tinker on the margins in terms of financial aid and tuition setting. We've got to make dramatic changes there. We've got to focus more on improving the business model and the delivery of higher education. And we've got to take a hard look at what our credentials mean, what these degrees, certificates, and other credentials actually mean in higher education, how they relate to our labor market needs, and how we make sure that our graduates actually have the skills, knowledge, and capacity that they need to succeed in our 21st century economy and to succeed in our democracy.
Thank you, Jamie. We're going to take a question that we got from the internet. Caroline from Santa Ana, California, is asking how are public-private partnerships driving K-12 programs to support workforce development prior to college? Who wants to take it? Bill?
Well, I think there's an awful lot of good things. I think just even the foundation work of organizations like Jamie's and others are very important to helping us move the needle and to change policy and to change the direction of the important work that we need to be about. And I think there's some very powerful nonprofit engines out there that are working. One of them is Western Governors University. It's one of the disruptive forces in our higher education system that is actually helping working adults get their degrees based on their competency and based on the things that they've learned in the workforce along the way. And I actually had the chance to go out to their graduation ceremony last year, and it was amazing to watch. The average graduate walking across that stage was 35 years old, and those are the types of opportunities. And actually, when I was at the Department of Education in 2001, we gave them a grant to help them build their school of education, and they are now graduating more teachers, I think, than almost any other university in the country. And so it's I think those types of opportunities where it's the public coming together with different nonprofits and community and also national organizations that can make a big difference.
Lily, there's always a debate about that sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to have a quick take on it.
And we look at what's happening not only with online universities and Western Governors is a nonprofit online university, but I also look at what's happening with our traditional state universities. People have suggested that maybe we need to rank our state universities by bang for the buck, or somehow what the students are getting out of the university. But we're alarmed at the diminishment of the state commitment, the state legislatures that are underfunding our state colleges and universities. And that's really the reason for that rising tuition cost. You either have to cut programs or you have to increase the tuition, and it's out of state. I would like to see a ranking of the state legislatures and their commitment to higher education. That's when I'd go. I'd look at that one.
We want to go to the audience. Anybody has a question? There's a mic going around. Anybody has a question? Over there, we have a question. No? Anybody? The mic is going your way.
Hi, I'm a college professor at a Hispanic Serving Institution in California, and I'm happen to agree with Lily about, the ranking of universities. The purpose of a higher education isn't simply the type of job that you're going to have once you leave the institution. And the beauty of a Hispanic Serving Institution, or many institutions of a brick and mortar college, is that we not only teach, but that we develop very close personal relationships with our students, whether they be freshmen or they be graduate students, but especially on the graduate level. So my question is, as we move towards this rapid proliferation of massive online courses, right, for expedience and for the purposes of getting your degree quickly, you sacrifice those types of relationships that as faculty we have with our students. So how do you ensure that the faculty voice, those of us closest to our students, also have input into this redesign of this system of higher education that many of you purport?
Thank you.
I was just going to say, I had the privilege of serving on the UC board for 12 years. I just rotated off, and to Lily's point, we saw a massive defunding of public higher education in the state of California, to the point where the state's participation has dropped to less than 30%. I think, what you said is just so important, that this should not be a substitute for the experience that especially undergraduates have on campus, because you're learning all of the skills of collaboration, of critical thinking, of working in teams, of the sorts of qualities and characteristics that employers eventually will demand from its workforce of tomorrow. So I think the question, and certainly there's experts up here, is does it provide an additional tool? But it absolutely, the MOOCs in particular, should not substitute the experience that undergraduate students have on campus.
Jamie?
Yeah, I want to make two observations. The first, just to reinforce your point here, and we were actually talking about this before we came out. Engagement of faculty in what is a rapidly changing context is extremely important for higher education. I think my personal view is that whatever you think of the changes that we've made at the K-12 level, one of the things that I think we've done wrong is that somehow we've made teachers the enemy. Somehow teachers have become part of the biggest part of the problem that we're trying to fix. Now, clearly, I want to be clear, we have problems with some teachers, and we've got to fix those problems, but we shouldn't use that as a substitute for what the students are getting and what the learning outcomes and other objectives that we have of learning that are so important in terms of the system. That should be our primary focus. So engagement of faculty in higher education change, I think, is really important. The second point, quickly on the use of technology, is that I think the future is really in the blended learning environments, that what we're seeing is the effective use of technology as part of a broader program. And actually, to reinforce Bill's point, which you might think disagrees with this, the thing about places like WGU is that WGU actually has a high level of student touch associated with their model, which is interesting. MOOCs do not. MOOCs are not a student touch model, but WGU has these mentors, has these other things, and so there's an element of that. The conversation we should have is what are the right ways in which we can engage people in those kind of models as opposed to these wholly online models, which I think are more complex. But clearly, blended learning is where the future of education is going to be.
Any more questions from the audience? We have another one over there.
Can you hear me? My name is Irma Becerra. I'm Vice President for Engagement at Florida International University, which is one of the nation's Hispanic Serving Institutions. We currently have 54,000 students, and we are the public university in Miami, which is an immigrant-based community where education really is the only hope for a better life. We have observed at least 5 years of defunding from our governor. And the decision was made this year that the two preeminent universities, which are the University of Florida and FSU, were going to get primarily the bulk investment, and urban serving institutions like Florida International University, they need to prove that they're doing the right thing. So the current situation is that per student funding from the state at FIU is significantly lower than what the two preeminent universities are getting per student, which gives us no choice but to raise tuition as a means to be able to make ends meet. Now, as the University of Access in the state of Florida, we find that our students come to us with a certain set of deficiencies that we have to make up for, either because they didn't have access to the best teachers in their urban schools or because they faced numerous barriers, financial barriers, socioeconomic barriers, etc. The solution that we have found is we find that engaged learning, either through internships, student learning, increasingly important for the success of our students, and of course dual enrollment, which we are very involved with, to get students to graduation faster. What can be done to educate our governors so that they understand the important role that urban universities serve, and not to continue on the defunding agenda? Per student, we need more than the preeminent universities. We need your help with taking that message forward.
Thank you. Who wants to take this one?
I love the question, what can we do to educate our governors? Depending on which state you're in, they're in a different level of classes that need some help. One of the things that you could do is challenge your governors, your state legislators, your members of Congress. When they come up with the next big thing, it's another commercial standardized test, it's another privatization scheme, whatever it is, ask them for the evidence that that works. We know what works. We've seen it on a global scale, whether it's preschool or graduate school. Professional design and collaboration to personalize instruction in your school, in your institution, and measuring what matters. That we keep measuring, but we're measuring this very low-level standardized test in most cases. I believe it was Texas, a university in Texas that wanted a value added for their college professors. They were going to take the college professor's salary and subtract how many grants and donations came in because of that professor. They'd subtract it, and that number would be the value added of the professor. People are so obsessed about measuring things, they've forgotten that you have to measure what actually matters to those students that you're trying to serve. And so we have to resist those silver bullet, next shiny things. Why don't we do this? Because somebody in a little group without any educators in the room said, why don't we do this? This is the way we would run a factory. So let's apply that to a university or to a public school. We have evidence of what works. It's hard work. It's complicated. Students are complicated. They aren't simple machines. And we have to keep coming back. Show me the evidence that your shiny thing is something we should invest in.
We have about 4 minutes for this last one. Oh, you want to jump at it?
I was just going to suggest...
I want to ask one short question after that, so go ahead.
I think Jamie touched on this earlier, that with the reauthorization of the Higher Education Act coming up, this is a very important opportunity to The federal government and the state government have always had, since 1965, a joint effort in funding higher education, and I do think it's gotten very much out of alignment, and I think you've also got some disincentives in the program anymore where we're now over borrowing, and borrowing has displaced merit-based aid or other type of aid, and so we now have $1 trillion in student loan debt. And I think we really need to take a fundamental look at funding the new horizon of higher education, the different types of students that are going on to higher education, the different types of needs that they have. We're still funding it like it was 1960 or 1970 with our grant and loan systems, and the states have had to make some adjustments, but they also are reacting to some of the changes made at the federal government, which haven't always been, I think, in a way that would have our system in the best alignment. So I think there are some opportunities to have the state and federal systems come in better alignment. It might help the states out.
Thank you for your questions, and thank you for this discussion. But we're going to move on now to some of the closing remarks. And Jamie, let me start with you.
Yeah, two quick things, because I want to come back to the urban question, which I thought was a very good question. I think that focusing on what we can do in metropolitan areas and communities is incredibly important, and the role of urban universities is critical. I would commend to you The Metropolitan Revolution, a book from the Brookings Institution that lays out why our urban communities are so important and where education fits into that agenda. The other point that I think is just worth mentioning here at the conclusion is that we have got to focus specifically on Latino attainment, but not as part of an add-on or a set-aside or a separate endeavor. We need to focus on it as part of the mainstream of what we're focusing on in increasing the outcomes, increasing the success of our students. That's terribly critical to the success of the country. This is not a separate problem. This is a problem that has to be addressed across the board in all of our programs and all of our strategies, because increasing educational attainment is the rising tide that's going to lift all the boats.
Monica?
No, I couldn't agree more. The future of America depends on a highly educated Latino population, and that's very clear. I would also come back to this, how do we engage at the state and federal level? And clearly, I do think that it has to be collaborative. You're going to work with the educators, with foundations. I would say grab your local business community and get them engaged as well, because they are the ones that are going to require this highly educated workforce to make the economy grow. So that is a natural constituency that has an imperative to make this happen. The other thing I would say is a reference was made to it. We have to change the model. The current model is antiquated and does not only not fill the needs, but it is bringing down entire sectors of the educational institutions. We've got to do it differently. So thinking outside of the box, being innovative, working collaboratively, I think is absolutely an essential component of this.
I would just even come back to the question that was asked over here, too. I think it's very important that we kind of try to take an all-of-the-above strategy. I think it's very important for us to have the residential opportunities on college campuses, but we have so many different types of students, and a lot of them are represented by this organization that have different needs at different times in their life. And so I do think we shouldn't be afraid of the MOOCs. We shouldn't be afraid of the traditional education. We shouldn't be afraid of all of the different opportunities that are out there for us. Our children, I've got 6 kids and 5 grandkids, and my 5-year-old granddaughter can just do circles around me with her iPad, and kids are just learning very differently now. And also our working adults, with our soft economy these last couple of years, are also going to have very different needs going forward. So I think we really need to have, frankly, an all-of-the-above strategy and not get sucked into it. It has to kind of fit within certain compartmentalization.
So much to say, so little time. We know what works, and we know that it's reaching that whole child, that whole family, that whole community, and it's dynamic collaboration to personalize instruction, to personalize the needs for that school community and the community those children and their families live in. Shameless commercial announcement. One of the things we need to do are to reach out to the families that are really counting on that school to care about the whole child. We're working with United We Dream at National Education Association. You'll find these pamphlets on getting information to families whose children might qualify for the deferred action for the DREAM Act kids. And that's part of it too, making sure that those families understand that school exists to make sure that they care about the whole child.
Well, thank you to all our distinguished panelists, and thank you, Senator Menendez. Thank you, Secretary Duncan. A round of applause. Thank you so much. And don't forget, you can follow CHCI on Facebook and Twitter. Tell all your friends. Press like us today, and don't miss any of CHCI's conference and gala webcasts at, again, hhm.chci.org, this time /livestream. Please join us for one of the 5 breakout sessions on some very compelling topics starting in about 15 minutes. You can find more information in your program guides, and we will see you back in this room at 12:30 for the Technology Roundtable Luncheon, Hispanic Impact on the Future. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks.
Cero y para